Why hasn't Amnesty condemned Israeli authorities?
Well, if accusing Israeli forces of acts that could be war crimes is not a condemnation, then I'm not sure what is. Day after day, the evidence was mounting. Hundreds of civilians have been killed, thousands of homes destroyed. Gaza's only power plant has been hit. It's cut off electricity and running water to 1.8 million people. It's hard to believe that this was not intended. If it was, it is a war crime. It is also hard to believe that a country with the military capability to really target their attacks has killed so many civilians.
Why hasn't Amnesty condemned Hamas for firing rockets into Israel?
We have. People have been killed, their homes and their properties have been damaged. We know that rockets fired from Gaza cannot be accurately aimed, meaning that Hamas has been firing untargeted missiles into Israel. Some Palestinian armed group leaders have even indicated that they have no qualms about launching attacks against civilians, and actually that they want to carry out these attacks intending to kill and injure Israeli civilians. This is a war crime. We have continually condemned Hamas and all Palestinian armed groups for firing indiscriminate rockets into Israel.
Have Hamas and Palestinian armed groups used Palestinian civilians as human shields, as Israeli authorities claimed?
Well, we have no evidence that Hamas or Palestinian armed groups have ordered people to stay in their homes as a kind of shield against attacks. But we do know that they have been putting people in danger by storing weapons, by firing rockets from residential areas. But keep in mind that, though, even if human shields are being used, international law is clear that Israel still has to protect those people.
Why have you been calling this a conflict? Wasn't it an occupation by Israel?
It was a conflict because there was fighting, but that isn't to say that Israel hasn't occupied Gaza. It absolutely has, although not everyone would agree. So for the last 7 years, Israel has imposed a military blockade on Gaza. It's been controlling all but one of Gaza's land border crossings, its waters off its coast and its airspace. So Israel restricts vital imports such as building materials, and it bans most exports. Israel's occupation is a man-made humanitarian crisis, and it blights the lives of Gaza's residents, so the blockade has to be lifted.
So what do you actually mean when you keep talking about international law?
In a nutshell, the laws of war, meaning that those involved in any conflict must do everything they can do to avoid harming civilians, so people not involved in the conflict. Deliberate attacks on civilians or civilian buildings, whether that's homes, medical facilities, schools, government offices, anything like that, are strictly banned. So using weapons that cannot accurately pinpoint a target in areas crowded with civilians and not differentiating between civilian and military targets is also strictly not allowed.
So what exactly has Amnesty done?
Well, we've called on both sides to respect the laws of war and to help people not involved in the fighting stay safe. It was so serious and so shocking that we're actually lobbying hard for the International Criminal Court to investigate what has happened, and we're researching and building a strong case to make sure that those responsible answer for their actions. At the same time, we've been mobilising millions of our activists all around the world to make sure that countries stop arming Israel, Hamas and the Palestinian armed groups with weapons that they can use to commit war crimes. In fact, one of our key action targets is the USA, Israel's biggest arms supplier. An arms embargo would be a way for countries to send a really strong message that they refuse to be accomplices in the kind of horror that is taking place in Israel and Gaza.